Would you mind if I put it on?
All right.
Should you maybe put it on? No, really?
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm not gonna say no.
For American Pickers fans, Danielle Colby's silence over Frank Fritz is finally broken. For a long time, everyone has been wondering what Danielle is thinking and why Frank left. What happened between Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe is now something she is prepared to discuss. Was Danielle a partisan? This is her perspective on the tale, filled with genuine emotions and facts, not idle babble. Stay tuned because Danielle Colby has spoken out about the rumors. Find out what the popular selection squad on television has been up to behind the scenes. Not everyone remembers Danielle Colby as a TV star. When American Pickers first began airing in 2010, she was only a buddy offering a hand. The ones that hit the road and dug through old barns for fascinating items were Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe. They sold their treasures at Antique Archaeology, which Danielle ran when she was back in Iowa. She was the one who took calls, followed up on leads, and kept things going forward. She had an instant following thanks to her genuineness, positive attitude, tattoos, and infectious energy. Danielle, though, wasn't only an accessory. She was the glue that held everything together. The success of the program was greatly contributed to by Mike and Frank. In Iowa, they had been friends for a long time and had a passion for vintage items. Danielle could tell they got along famously. Mike had lofty goals and was constantly harping on the need of preserving history, whereas Frank was more reserved and concerned with the finer points, like the mechanism of an antique toy. Their bickering was entertaining to observe, especially when Mike insisted on a rusted sign and Frank on a motorbike component. When they contacted Danielle from the road, she would laugh and joke about who had the day. Despite not being in the vehicle, she enjoyed being a part of their team. Things were easy in the beginning. In their white van, they would rummage through people's belongings in search of valuables. Whatever they brought back, Danielle made sure the store was ready. When they returned from their adventures, she would listen to their tales of finding a broken bike or an ancient sign and offer her assistance in restoring it. Inquiries regarding Mike and Frank prompted an influx of customers to the store to meet her. Though thrilling, Danielle sensed that this would not be a permanent state of affairs. More and more issues surfaced as the show's popularity grew. With time, Danielle became good friends with Mike and Frank. When it came to ideas, Mike was always moving forward, whereas Frank preferred to take things leisurely and focus on the finer points. Danielle was the perfect middle ground. She asked Frank how he was doing when he seemed exhausted and chatted with Mike about his plans. It was like being part of a big family since everyone trusted her. She could tell there was danger even at that early stage. Mike would occasionally exert a bit too much pressure, and Frank would occasionally get silent. So yet, nothing major has occurred, only clues of what may occur later. U.S. Pickers became an instant hit as television became more popular. Witnessed the event firsthand was Danielle Colby. It was a sluggish start. Using a wobbly camera, Mike has been selling the concept for years. He would bring Frank there, and the two of them would get muddy climbing into old barns, with Danielle lending a hand from the store by digging up leads. Networks insisted on declining because they assumed no one would watch two men go through trash, but Mike refused to give up. The History Channel gambled in 2010, and the first show drew 3.1 million viewers. Danielle was astounded. Overnight, the store became a veritable zoo as admirers flocked to witness the source of the enchantment. All of a sudden, Danielle was famous. After seeing her on TV, many wanted to take photographs with her. A decrepit gas pump was just one of the interesting things she'd show them while smiling and giving them a tour. Mike thought it was entertaining, but insane. She needed to bring on more help to keep up. Phones were constantly ringing with people wanting to know where Frank and Mike were and who could supply pictures. The intensity was great, but Danielle couldn't handle it. Out there, Mike and Frank were living it up, phoning her from all over the place to brag about their hauls. Frank brags about finding an ancient fire extinguisher. Mike can't quit raving about a massive neon sign he unearthed. After Danielle made a note of it, she would chuckle and get the store ready for whatever they brought in. The show, however, had become increasingly difficult. They were on the road for long hours, filming 250 days a year. It was clear from their voices that they were defeated, yet they persisted. But fame didn't affect them in the same way. With a bold move, Mike established a store in Nashville, and business quickly boomed. His arrival drew large crowds. It was amazing, in Danielle's opinion. He was leaving his imprint. Staying in Illinois and keeping his picking under wraps was Frank's idea of a good time. She would playfully accuse him, "You're the silent star, huh?" At that point, he would shift the conversation's focus by grunting. On TV, it was Mike loud, Frank chill, and Danielle saw how it balanced each other out. At home, she maintained stability. Even Danielle had her following. She had a burlesque flair, tattoos, and a unique style that everyone adored. "You're the coolest," people would write in response to the photos she posted online. Like a strange doll, Frank discovered, Danielle devoured it, and the long days became worthwhile. Fans went absolutely crazy whenever she shared minor shop updates. The program, though, was changing, and she saw it. Their selection was no longer the only one. Crews, plans, and substantial funds were present. It was more like a chore than an adventure. Speculation persisted. Episode costs increased by $250,000 from its initial estimates by 2015. Pressure was mounting, and Danielle could feel it. Frank only wished to remain authentic, but Mike aspired for every discovery to be a smash. Sometimes she would overhear them arguing, but it would always be over minor issues. "We need a big score," Mike would say, and Frank would shout, "I'm not digging for your TV." At that moment, Danielle remained detached, concentrating on the business. She relished her role as the steady, reliable one. Danielle was elated by the thrilling journey. Millions of people tuned in weekly to the broadcast. She would occasionally take a step back and marvel at how far they had gone, from a small business in Iowa to televisions all over the world. She sensed that no matter how wonderful everything seemed, it couldn't last. Notoriety brings many benefits, but it also takes away some of those same things. Something was about to happen, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it just yet. She simply kept the store running well for the time being, preparing for whatever came next. There was impending crisis. Despite the show's continued success in 2017, something went amiss behind the scenes of American Pickers. Mike and Frank told Danielle everything, but she wasn't out choosing. There were large crews, demanding schedules, and a ton of money riding on this show's success. With an unwavering commitment, Mike pushed for its expansion. Whenever he had a good idea for the store or found something interesting, he would phone her from Nashville to share it. Danielle adored his enthusiasm, but she could sense his anxiety. He aspired for each show to impress viewers, which increased their workload. In contrast, Frank called less often, and when he did, he always sounded exhausted. He had been coping with Crohn's illness, which Danielle was aware of. A severe and worsening stomachache plagued him. When she would inquire, "Are you okay out there?" he would seldom bring it up. Once he'd answer, "Yeah, just tired," he'd continue on. Frank was missing days of work and appeared unwell on set, but she refrained from pressuring him because he was secretive like that. He enjoyed picking, but his body wasn't able to keep up, and Danielle began to worry. Fans continued to stop by the shop and inquire about Mike and Frank, keeping her occupied. "How is Frank doing these days?" they would state. When asked why he was out choosing, Danielle would simply grin and reply. The indicators were there, but she didn't want to stir rumors. Frank's calls became shorter, Mike's became busier, and the program was driving a wedge between them. At one point, Frank lost it. In his rage, he summoned her from a distance. Mike said, "He's making this into a circus." Without taking a position, Danielle only listened. "They're both thrilled," she explained. Frank hung up when he puffed. Although it wasn't her fight, the memory of it lingered, so she chose not to inform Mike. They would joke about it instead of arguing. In the event that the performance strained their relationship, she questioned if it had been worthwhile. In spite of this, she continued to run the store as if nothing had happened. Danielle understood that the programs were edited to disguise the bad sections, but fans didn't notice it yet. The episodes looked amazing, with Mike and Frank laughing and finding treasures. Even if she silently thought, that's not the whole story, she would continue to watch. She was content with her role as shop manager, where she could avoid the turmoil. Mike would drop by every so often, all agog with ideas. Frank rarely dropped by. She longed for the days when they used to hang around and share stories. It seemed obvious that 2019 would be a monumental year. With his health deteriorating, Frank missed more shots, and the team rushed to catch up. The frustration on Mike's face was evident to Danielle as he persisted in pressing. On the phone, she could hear him lament that Frank wasn't here. Uncertain of her words, she hesitated. At this point, the act was robotic and would not pause for any audience member. Unsolvable problems began to pile up for Danielle. Before everything became out of hand, she was hoping Mike and Frank could resolve the issue. The vehicle comes to a halt. The wheels came off in March of 2020. The final episode of American Pickers starring Fritz aired, and suddenly he was no more. It was Mike who told Danielle Colby. One evening he whispered into her phone and said, "Frank's done." When she wanted to know why, Mike was stumped and said, "He's just not coming back." Danielle refrained from pressing the issue, sensing his disappointment. Even though she had anticipated it, the blow still hurt. Since the beginning, Frank had been a part of it all with his silly laugh and passion for strange things. He felt out of place as the vehicle continued to move without him. Frank divided his loyalties. His kid learned from him later that he hadn't had any communication with Mike for 2 years. He said, "My back's messed up," and Mike never even bothered to call. Danielle was not quite convinced. Frank's feelings were understandable, as she had witnessed Mike reposition shots when Frank was ill. It seemed possible that more than just routine adjustments were necessary for his pain. It wasn't her thing, so she didn't contact him to verify. She expected him to ask for her hand if he desired it. He never did. Crazy fans went crazy. Then why did Frank depart? Online, they inquired. Was he abandoned by Mike? Danielle observed the posts but chose not to respond. She posted pictures of outdated goods online to keep the store afloat and avoid answering any inquiries. She was adamant about remaining neutral. Mike had always been her friend. However, Frank was also gone, and she despised his absence. "How are things going?" she asked Mike via text message. He would respond, "We're managing." She refrained from inquiring about Frank because she believed it would be too unfiltered. The reality was a tangled web. Frank's Crohn's had taken a terrible turn, requiring 17 hospitalizations in only 2 years, on top of his alcohol rehab in 2020. The crew informed Danielle about it. Because suffering changes individuals, she didn't see him as an error. She recalled him making a joke about a find once, all gushing about how the guy was fading and how terrible it was. Mike continued to cast fresh actors and film more. Despite being wonderful, Danielle found that the episodes were different. Despite his recent grouchiness, she missed Frank's energy. The store was still bustling with admirers, and the pandemic in 2020 had everyone on edge. She had her own kind of pandemonium to handle. Danielle, who wore a mask and spoke through the glass, kept it open whenever she could. She would state vaguely, "He's taking a break," in response to the incessant questions about Frank. She was hesitant to tell the truth since she lacked all the information. In an online statement, Mike expressed his loss for Frank and referred to him as a brother. Mike meant it, Danielle nodded after reading it. But Frank's remarks lingered in her mind. He had confided in his kid about his feelings of being unimportant, about how Mike stole the show while he was only supporting cast member. Danielle understood. Mike was the public face, the idealist, and Frank the everyday person who loved to choose the little things that fans enjoyed. Even though she didn't believe Mike had forced Frank to go, she could understand how he might feel abandoned. Mike was the one who created the show, and Frank was falling behind. In her heart, she wished they had just spoken things out. Danielle lowered her gaze. For Frank, the van came to a halt, and she had no choice but to continue rolling. Her life, dancing, and the shop were her only concerns. As far as the audience was concerned, there were rumors of money disputes and envy. Nothing bothered her. Frank and Mike were both in pain, and she knew it. There came a moment when she couldn't take it anymore. She had no choice except to sit tight and let events unfold. That had come later. She wasn't prepared to speak just yet. A watershed moment came in July 2021 when Danielle Colby spoke up. Since Frank's departure, she has been avoiding admirers and speculations. Her internet profile has been bombarded with inquiries such, "What's up with Frank? Out on the road again with my closest buddy and big brother, whom I support wholeheartedly and stand behind." Boom, she was Team Mike. She despised it, so she grabbed her phone, took a photo with Mike, and shared it on Instagram. Still, she hadn't finished. Regarding Frank Fritz, she had much to say. As she continued to type, the urgency grew. "I'm truly saddened by the loss of Frank on the show. I'm incredibly sad for his struggles. I have personally watched everything over the last decade." Not with a narrative of a major altercation, but Danielle Colby verifies the rumors. She knew firsthand how difficult it was for Frank to deal with health issues and maybe more. Readers went absolutely bonkers. "What challenges you?" They wanted to know, they inquired. She didn't explicitly say it. Her purpose was not to spread rumors, but to share her knowledge. "It has been difficult to witness Frank bring so much suffering onto himself," she said with a heavy tone. "I sincerely hope Frank receives all the help he needs to become well." Needless to say, that hit people hard after all those years of his illness. Rather of being angry, Danielle felt concerned. It saddened her to see Frank deteriorate. She only wished he would recover and refrained from criticizing or blaming him. In her post, Danielle explained, "The only reason I'm speaking to this right now is because everybody is speculating on my words." She went on to say, "My words are being taken out of context in tabloid rags because they can't interview me." She was clearly fed up with junk stories that twisted her silence. "I hope everybody gets well. Here's how I feel," she continued. She wanted everything told to her face-to-face without any speculation or falsehoods. She had had enough of having other people speak for her. Many fans spoke up. While some gushed, "Danielle's so real," she was unconcerned since she wasn't about to reveal everyone's dirty little secret. From shop chats to road calls, she had spent an inordinate amount of time with Mike and Frank. Mike was her choice since he had her back no matter what, but Frank was still important to her. She just gave us a sneak peek in her post. She had gotten her message over and the rest was up to speculation. Things continued after that. A flurry of activity continued as soon as Danielle began working there. She would just grin, reply, "Check my post," and then walk on when fans continued to ask her questions. She encouraged him online as Mike continued to choose. Neither she nor Frank made any attempts to communicate. The air was now clear thanks to her efforts. The rumors of a quarrel were put to rest after she took a stand. She let the audience fill in the blanks, saying it wasn't any deeper than Frank's suffering or Mike's prodding. It became calm, but still not easy. American pickers lost Frank Fritz, and Danielle Colby had to deal with the aftermath. She kept her internet presence minimal and focused on shopping recommendations and dance-related content, but she was aware behind the scenes that Frank was seriously ill. Always had been his Crohn's. From what she could tell, his efforts to improve weren't yielding the desired results. Because Danielle assumed he needed space, she refrained from calling him. All she wanted was for him to make it. Mike was the lifeblood of the program, and Danielle was his rock. Sometimes, despite appearing exhausted, he would swing by the store. "We're still picking," he would state. She'd nodded with joy. He was holding on. Her post has silenced some of her fans' questions on Frank. Frank wasn't doing well. She overheard crew members complaining about his frequent hospital visits and other problems. It was horrible for Danielle. She recalled an incident where he walked into the business with a rusted bike and a childlike smile, as if he were about to disappear. That was till 2022. A large and terrifying stroke struck Frank. A buddy of Danielle's on the crew told her, Mike left everything behind to see him. She remained mum about the specifics, but she did hear that Mike spent a lot of time there, sitting by Frank's bed and bringing him trinkets like old photos and things they'd discovered together. After all that time had passed, Danielle thought it was awesome that Mike had shown his concern. She didn't drop by. Her relationship with Frank was distant, but she did keep tabs on it. Frank took some time to recover. After suffering a severe stroke, he required extensive assistance. Eventually, in October of 2024, it was all over. Frank departed this life. When Mike called Danielle, he sounded completely devastated. "He's gone," he announced. She only listened as she was at a loss for words. According to Mike, he stayed until the very end, carrying items from their harvesting days. A knot formed in Danielle's throat. She had known Frank, his eccentricities, his discoveries, forever. It was as if the entertainment had been cut short when he left. It took her a day to think about it, so she didn't post about it. No one in the audience knew a thing, not this. However, they did hear Danielle's message and see Frank go. Aside from posting a brief online statement lamenting his brother's absence, Mike also remained silent. Even though Danielle understood that he didn't want to cause a fuss, the stories soon began circulating again. Reports surfaced that Mike had left Frank and that their friendship had been shattered by their mutual popularity. Frank fought with his body, and she had saw Mike stand up, so she shook her head in disapproval. It was more complex than that. The whispers about Fritz have been circulating, and now Danielle Colby has spoken up. She has had enough of waiting months after Frank passed away. No frills, just her, as she settles down for an interview. Finally, Frank's body failed. Over the years, she claims, she witnessed Crohn's disease, agony, and everything else unfold. Frank had to stop. It's straight up, Danielle says, adding, no fluff. This dispels reports of a fight and reveals that Frank was the one who forced Mike to leave. As she points to the thumbnail and says, it's time to tell everything. She lays out the facts clearly. Frank enjoyed picking but couldn't because of his health. According to her, he spent 2 years, 2017 and 2018, in and out of hospitals. Mike waited, moved shots, and attempted to assist, but Frank had already lost. Frank grimacing on calls, Mike anxious over schedules. She had witnessed it all. He left not because he despised it, but because he was incapable of continuing. Even though it's not shocking, supporters are embracing it because it's true. Mike then gets the other side of it. Mike, according to her, stood by him. He was there after the stroke, taking care of finances and bringing in antiques for the hospital. At Frank's death, he was present. What Danielle doesn't know, she doesn't speculate. They had close friends and family who had told her. According to her, Mike kept quiet about it, but he was already there. She intends to end the quarrel in this way. The whispers that existence itself was the villain, and not Mike. By saying, I've known them since the start, she briefly enters a more personal realm. Mike was the idealist who preserved large items, whereas Frank was the reserved one who sought for little ones. With a grin on her face, Danielle recalls how fame was tough, long days, tremendous pressure, but that it wasn't hate that drove a wedge between them. They were awesome together, she says. Frank's bones immediately crumbled. She's just being honest and forthright without being angry or unhappy. Now fans know everything, and it's a big deal. A dramatic climax with accusations of betrayal was anticipated, but Danielle refrains from providing one. The plot lacks excitement. She lets out a little laugh. Instead of Mike, Frank battled for his health. Not Frank, but Mike battled to keep the program running. In 2021, she dropped hints, but now it's official. What she means is that she didn't say more at the time. Time wasn't right. The interview was brief but effective, and she continues, I'm not here for clicks. I'm here for the truth. Now that Frank is out of the picture, it is. A remarkable item was created, she remarks. Their thing was American Pickers, in which two friends chased after garbage. There were no dramatic sobs or lengthy speeches from Danielle. The show is carrying on thanks to Mike, and Frank's contribution is alive and well in it. She backs up the rumors with evidence, not speculation. No more guesswork for the fans. They can hear and feel it. She has told them the tale based on her extensive observational experience. Finally, she adds, "That's it. No major argument, just life as she knows it." "I couldn't be prouder of them both," Danielle says before exiting the room. Frank is dead and gone, Mike is still selecting, and she has spilled the beans. Here we have closure, not a twist. As far as she's concerned, her admirers should feel the same way. Now that the truth is out, she can tell the tale. Everything is now crystal evident, thanks to Danielle Colby's American Pickers reveal. Frank's health, Mike's allegiance. There were no confrontations, only difficult periods and eventual sadness. Is Danielle's tale something you can relate to? Is it in line with your expectations? Fill out the form below. We are reviewing each and every remark. If you want to see more videos like these, hit subscribe. Much obliged for your time.